I was getting impatient. "Just fucking spit it out, Bella," I said, exasperated. I didn't have this kind of experience with girls, and it was really fucking frustrating that I didn't know what was bothering her so much, and that she was afraid to tell me. She began pulling at her sleeves once again, chancing an occasional peek at my frustrated expression.
"You treat me differently than you treated them?"
she asked in question form, not meeting my gaze, as her long brown hair shielded most of her face from my view. And I fucking snorted. "Of course I treat you differently. I'd never disrespect you like that because I love you," I added sincerely, scooting back to lean against my headboard while I let that shit soak in. She peeked up at me through her lashes and hair.
"That's the only reason though?"
she whispered skeptically, biting her lip. I raised my eyebrows and nodded at her. "What other reason would there be?" I asked incredulously. She looked back down and shrugged one shoulder, playing with her sleeve still. I watched her for a few moments with pursed lips, trying to piece together the clues to figure out why she was so upset, since she wouldn't just fucking tell me I treated her with more respect, and those other girls? She seemed sad that she wasn't like them. She felt inferior. And when the notion finally seeped into my slow-ass brain, I snorted again. "You don't think that I wanted them more, or some shit?" I scoffed as a statement, trying to make it true, because the thought was just so fucking ridiculous. She shook her head at her lap, not looking me in the eye, and basically confirming my suspicion by doing so. My whole heart fucking sank. I pushed off the headboard and scooted in front of my girl, folding my legs beneath me and grabbing her by the waist. She didn't look up at me as I lifted her into my lap so that she was straddling me. I grabbed her red face in my hands, and forced her to look me in the eye. I gazed intently into her sad brown eyes, using all the love I had for her to fucking cement my next statement in utter sincerity. "You're right. That is really fucking stupid," I whispered, shaking my head. She grimaced and closed her eyes.
"I know it is,"
she sighed in a regretful tone. She opened her eyes and rolled them at me.
"Just forget I said anything,"
she muttered, still fucking blushing, and obviously embarrassed as she stared into my eyes. But that wasn't something I could just fucking forget. I was constantly fighting to push the lust away to make her comfortable until we were even ready to consider it. I knew Bella got carried away in the heat of the moment sometimes, but I had no fucking clue she even wanted me to take shit any further. I wanted to tell her I jerked off to stupid shit, like her collarbones and curly hair, because I wanted her so fucking badly, but decided to save myself that humiliation. Instead, I brought her face to mine and crushed my lips to hers. She was taken aback, but returned the kiss as I slid my tongue in between her slightly parted lips. I deepened the kiss this time, pulling her face closer and tilting mine, to drive my tongue deeper into her mouth. She sighed and tangled her fingers into my hair, and fucking pulled it with her fists as she brought my face closer. It really didn't take long for me. I removed my hands from her face, and grabbed her hips as she fought against my tongue, bringing her closer to my body as I pushed her down into my rather obvious boner. She moaned into my mouth as I pulled my face away from hers. I was breathless as I stared into her hooded brown eyes, and rested my forehead against hers. See, I breathed into her face, pushing her down harder just to emphasize my point. I felt her breath hitch as her grip on my hair momentarily tightened, making my eyes roll back a little bit. She nodded against my forehead, and dried her hips against my dick again, making my eyes flutter closed as I groaned loudly. That really wasn't my intention, so I tightened my grip on her hips to make her stop. I opened my eyes and looked at her all fucking disapprovingly. My point was, I breathed as she looked at me confused, leaned against my forehead. That even though I really fucking want you, I hold myself back, I concluded in a whisper against her face. She furrowed her brows at me, loosening her fists in my hair, to stroke it gently with her fingertips.
"Why?"
she whispered quietly as she looked into my eyes. I sighed into her face as she stroked my hair softly. "Because it would fucking kill me to make you uncomfortable," I said honestly while gazing into her confused brown eyes. She snorted.
"That's it?"
she asked incredulously, rolling her eyes as she backed off of my forehead. I quirked an eyebrow at her and nodded. It seemed like a pretty fucking good reason to me, she chuckled, shaking her head.
Christ, Edward, I've been basically throwing myself at you since—
And she trailed off with another chuckle that kind of fucking annoyed me.
Since Phoenix, definitely.
She nodded and chuckled some more. I rolled my eyes as she chuckled and flopped onto my back. You let yourself get carried away in the moment, Bella. Doesn't mean you're ready for all that shit. I raised my eyebrows at her as she sat on top of me still. Without warning, her chuckles died as anger flashed in her eyes.
I'm not a child, Edward.
She glared down at me, holding her chin up and rounding her shoulders back indignantly while she narrowed her eyes at me. I fought the urge to smirk up at her as she fumed at me because she just looked so fucking cute. I've seen kittens that were more frightening. She huffed, staring down her nose at me.
Just because you happen to be more experienced than me when it comes to—
She paused, fucking blushing, and making me want to smirk more, because she was just proving my point. And she must have known, because she lifted her chin higher.
Sex,
she spat down at me,
doesn't give you the right to be so condescending.
She went on, looking like she was dying to stick her tongue out at me.
I'd know what I was ready for better than anyone.
She snapped, glowering down her nose at me still. And I couldn't fucking take it anymore. I laughed. Kind of hard too, making her bounce on top of me with every hearty chuckle. She got even more furious as her eyes widened. Realizing that she thought I was laughing at her reasoning, I sat up, wrapping my arms around her waist, trying to stop my chuckles, and buried my face in the crook of her neck, when I couldn't. I'm sorry. I chuckled, still shaking my head in the crook of her neck as she sat rigid atop me. You're just so fucking cute when you're pissed off. I snickered, still shaking my head. I could practically hear her rolling her eyes at me as I let my snickers die off. When I was certain I wouldn't offend her further by erupting into another fit of laughter, I eased back and looked into her eyes. She still looked a little pissed off as she held her chin up, refusing to be thought of as a child. I rolled my eyes at her. I wasn't trying to be condescending. I stared into her eyes apologetically as her posture minutely relaxed. I was just trying to take shit slow. I whispered pleadingly. She frowned at me and nodded, bringing her arms around my neck and hugging it softly. I tightened my grip on her waist, burying my face into the crook of her neck again, and breathing in deeply. She shifted again against me, unintentionally stirring me back into a full-fledged erection. I sighed into her neck, wondering if it would hurt her feelings if I pulled away. I figured it probably would, so I eased us back, and rolled us over onto our sides, in sleeping position with her leg still hitched over my hip. But her nose was still too hurt to sleep like that, and I was already tired from the long day of being fucking gaped at, so I rolled onto my back, easing her cheek onto my chest, and fighting the urge to groan as her thigh rested right on my crotch. I figured she was just as tired as me since she did that object when I turned out the light. I tightened my arms around my girl as she hummed me to sleep softly, vowing to do everything in my power to make her feel as superior as she truly fucking was.